When I was about 7-8, I lived in these apartments. It had a 2-story, the bottom, living room and kitchen. The top, bathroom and rooms. And of course there were stairs. Anyways, one night, I was unable to sleep. Me and my sister shared a room, my brother had his own, and of course my mom had her own too. As I was laying there, forcing myself to try and sleep, I began hearing footsteps on the stairs. For some odd reason, I assumed it was my aunt coming up the stairs. But soon enough, I was wrong. The footsteps never stopped, never came to the top, never went to the bottom. It sounded as if they were not moving at all. The footsteps felt like it was going on forever. The footsteps sounded like someone wearing chanclas, flip-flops. Of course my curious little self got up to try and check it out. But once I got to the rail of the stairs, I couldn't bring myself to look. It felt as if all this sad energy just hit me. I couldn't move, or speak, all I did was cry and cry and cry. I wanted to run to my mom's room because of how scared I was, but I had to pass the stairs in order to make it to her room. Again, I just couldn't do it. I was scared, frightened, I didn't know what to do but cry, whimper. The footsteps just seemed to be getting louder, it sounded as if it was never going to stop. Finally I had the urge to move myself and I ran to my room, jumped on my bed, and covered myself with my blanket. I tried so hard to ignore the footsteps, but I couldn't. They were there, being loud, never stopping. Sooner or later, I was able to fall asleep. I never said anything, due to me being too scared to bring it up, and I had no idea how to explain what I felt and heard. Then we moved away from that place, years passed, and I grew older and maturer in my words. I brought it up to my mom one day, and all she ever says to me is I have demons and need to repent. Gosh dang it, women, after all those years I get this. Another time, it happened in the same apartment, same age range, same everything. Me, my sister, and a friend of ours were having a sleepover, of course at my place. We were playing dress up in my mom's room. Dancing and jumping, doing little girl things. So we got tired of jumping so much, so we laid on the bed to catch our breaths. Then, we hear this door creak. I looked up to see what it was. It was the door. I assumed it was my little brother wanting to play with us, so I screamed at the door, "Go away, insert name. We don't want to play with you, this is only for us girls." The door then slowly opened to about a 180-degree crack. I got up frustrated that he wouldn't let us play by ourselves. I swung open the door quick before he could get away, but when I opened it, I saw nothing, and I absolutely heard no one giggling or going down the steps. I turned around to my sister and our friend, and screamed. After I screamed, they screamed as well. We ran downstairs fast. I saw my brother there on the couch playing his racing games, and my mom in the kitchen cooking. I started screaming at my brother about not to scare us and it being not funny. My mom responded, "He's been down here the whole time." I haven't told this story to my mom yet, but if I do, I already know her reply, so there's no point. There were many more things that happened, but these were the major things that just stuck with me through my years. When I was 15, my dad was driving to a friend's house to practice some roller hockey. My buddy lived in a 2-story log cabin with a long winding driveway. It was the first time I had been to his house and had been told his parents wouldn't be home until later in the evening. As we drove up, my dad says he thought my friend's parents weren't home and I told him they weren't. He then points to a 2nd-story window and says, "Well, someone is here." I look up and see an older male dressed in Western clothing and wearing a big cowboy hat. "This is Texas, so that isn't unusual," I said. "I guess they got home early," and shrugged it all. A while later I mentioned something about asking his parents something and he says they won't be home till later. I point out both my dad and I saw someone in his house and he freaks out because no one was supposed to be there. We then go in the house to check it out and don't find anyone. After his parents got home we were in a back room of the house and I see a picture of the guy who had been upstairs. I point it out to my buddy and he turns white and says that was his granddad, who died 6 years earlier. Turns out my buddy's parents believed the house to be haunted by multiple spirits. I work at an hospital as a janitor. Once I got called for cleaning something on the floor of a patient's room. Precisely the bathroom. The day was super slow, it was sunny outside and this wing of the hospital floor we were on was super quiet that day. I got in the room and there was this elderly gentleman who had his wheelchair stored in the corner of his room. He was unable to walk and barely able to talk, so I politely say hi and go take a look at what I had to clean. I'm not sure to remember what it was, but it was sticky and wasn't getting off. I got up to get my scraper in my cart, then got back in. I noticed there was one of the large bowls we fill with water to clean patients when they're too weak to stand in the showers. It was laid in the sink. So I get on all fours and start to scrape whatever was glued to the floor. Then I felt something weird, like I was being watched. Suddenly, the bowl that was in the sink flew over my head and crashed on the wall next to me. Nobody else but me and the elderly men were in the room. He couldn't walk, the windows were closed. So nothing that I know from the circumstances could have caused the bowl to crash so violently on the wall next to me. My first thought was, something doesn't want me here with this man. So I quickly finished and got the hell out of the room. I've had spirit interactions all my life. I can't perfectly recall this one due to my age. I was still a baby. I would always point at my closet and say "Grandma in the closet." My mom always thought that I was seeing her mom who had passed when my mom was 15. Another was more of a demonic spirit. I was around 5. My house has 3 bathrooms and we call the one in the hallway the middle bathroom. Whenever my mom would give me a bath, I would randomly start sobbing and tell her this gruesome story that no 5-year-old could come up with. The one I remember well is that my mom was in the back of a police car and that they were pulling me with a hook. No, I have no idea what that means either. I told my mom I saw a lady in a nightgown with no face and no feet. One day, when I was brushing my teeth in that bathroom, my mom told me she wanted to talk to this lady. I said okay, and a moment later, I paused and said, she said yes. It scared my mom. I have more experiences, but those are the most eventful. Used to live in a house where many times when we were heading out of the house, she'd hear faint voices in the other room, so she'd go to turn the TV off, thinking we left it on, and find that it was already off. My dad was in a trailer for a while where they'd sometimes hear someone walking down the hall to the bathroom and it would flush a bit later, but during the weekdays when none of us kids were visiting. My dad later lived in a house where the previous owner was an old lady who she and her husband were the original owners who had the house built, and her husband definitely was still there. He had a habit of leaving dimes around, one example being when working on the computer and left the room to do something, came back and there were dimes sitting across some keys. They saw him standing in the bathroom tub one night, and another time when one of my sisters was having health problems and needed to be rushed to the hospital. They saw him waving at them down by the garage as they were pulling out of the driveway. My grandma passed away when I was 6. Whenever she would come visit us, she would always admire the chandelier we had in our house. She usually would come in town for the holidays or a family event, and she would love to make dessert. She would always use almond bark as one of her main ingredients when making cookies. So she passed away March 14th and we went up to her funeral a week later. Saw most of our family. We get back home and the first thing we notice is that the chandelier is swinging back and forth, not fast but slow and like controlled as if someone was pushing it. The next thing we noticed was that in the pantry we had a few containers left of almond bark. They were found all over the ground. When I was around the age of 9 or 10, I had experienced a lot of odd things. I heard my siblings and parents calling out my name randomly from upstairs in the hallway outside my room for about a month before this. This was weird because every time I would hear these things, my siblings would be out of the house or standing right next to me. I remember the voices stopping for a couple days until one night, I was in my bed getting ready to sleep when I heard what I thought was my sister calling out to me. I replied with "Yay, I'm going to sleep." But she didn't answer. I got up and I saw a woman sitting in the corner of my room facing the wall. She was right next to the door, so I couldn't leave the room without approaching her. So instead I called for my mom, but when she came to my room, she told me that there was nothing there. She then yelled at me for wasting her time and forced me to sleep in my room with whatever in there with me. Around 7 or 8 I believe, I had my tonsils removed. Now, I am waking up in the recovery area of the hospital, in a room with a single chair and a curtain to close off the room. When I came to, I saw that there was a man sitting across from me in the single chair. He was dressed entirely in black, a black suit, black pants, shoes, hat, gloves, everything. I did not see a face, but he sat there, reading a newspaper. I rolled over and went back to sleep. To this day my parents swear nobody came to see me in recovery, not even them. Nobody was allowed back into recovery until the patient woke up, but I always remember them being there. This was shortly after my father passed, so I have heard ideas it might have been my father. Other ideas I have heard is that it was death waiting on someone nearby to die, a demon waiting to take someone to hell, etc. More of my sisters than mine, but here. So my sister, when she was around 4-8, had an imaginary friend. His nickname was Ghosty, and she would sit in her room and play with him. Once my gram asked her more about him and she perfectly described our great-grandfather. My gram didn't talk about him much as he died when she was pretty young and we were still young too. It was weird since she didn't know anything about him but described his death perfectly, his name, age, and job. Not my own but my mom's. So she started the day with unloading the dishwasher and putting all the cups into the cabinet. She stacked all of them upside down and then went to work. When she got home she went to go get a cup. All the cups were flipped right side up and filled with about 3 inches of water. She lived alone at the time and was pretty creeped out about it. I have made too many ghost stories, from growing up in that house. We started hearing knocks on the siding, 2nd floor, as if someone was at the door. This followed loud banging in the basement every night. I decided to record through the night and this snowflake ornament started spinning long after all had gone to bed. There was no draft as the other ornaments didn't move. When I played it back I heard a man's voice repeatedly calling me a hoe. I still live there,